mowed their lawn, and then went and knocked on their neighbor's door, mowed their lawn, and just started kind of going around and knocking on neighbors' doors and saying, hey, can I mow your lawn? And it's like, hey, can I wash your car? And I started doing that little entrepreneurial gig early on. And I remember being in my bed one day, or my room one day, counting my money from the weekend. And my mom walks in and she sits down next to me on the bed and she goes, oh, are you counting all the money you've been saving? I'm like, no, this is what I made this weekend. And her mouth kind of falls open on the floor. She was like, you made more money than Dad did this weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like this is wild. And so I kind of knew from that point that there were two different paths.
Our guest today has an incredible story. From being left at a yard sale as a 12-week-old baby to losing $160,000 of his own money in a failed company, he knows what failure feels like. He knows what it tastes like and what it smells like. But he did not let his circumstances determine his altitude in life. From the lessons learned, he has since built 3 7-figure brick and mortar companies and helped turn 9 companies in the red to be wildly profitable. Today, he is a business consultant and coach, and his main goal is to help others turn chaos into profit. Welcome to the show, Kyle Livingston.
What is up, Mike? I am pumped to be here with you today, man.
What's going on, brother? I'm pumped to have you here. Guys, check him out at visionaryvitals.com. I have that in the show notes for you and clickable. His podcast is Project Fortify. He's doing a fantastic job in business as a coach. His podcast is one of the top podcasts on the planet. So I'm super excited to have you here, Kyle. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Let's rock and roll. I'm excited to serve the audience and see what fun stuff we dig out in our conversation today.
Yeah, I feel like our audience, we can kind of cross-pollinate, as I always say, because we got a lot of people like startup entrepreneurs, people looking for that next level in life, the next step. They're not looking for a handout, but maybe a hand up, right? We're going to give them some information today. I'm going to pick your brain, kind of dive deep into your story. And I feel like that is what is going to be, we'll use the word from your website, vital. That's going to be what's vital to help them get to that next level. So I appreciate you being here. And I appreciate you diving deep with me into your story. So, I mean, from the beginning, right? We talked about the 12-week-old baby in your intro. I mean, you're an incredible miracle worth celebrating. And I just want to do that from the get-go. So cheers to that you're here today to tell the story. And so take us back to the beginning. You were in survival mode even before you were born. Share the story with us. I know your birth mom wasn't making it easy from day one.
Yeah, she definitely didn't. I mean, I was attempted to be kicked off this earth a few times, and even before I was born. And she had a problem with drugs. She didn't want to keep me originally to begin with. Wanted to have an abortion. Tried to have an abortion multiple different times. Couldn't for whatever reason. Whether the clinic wouldn't do it or was unsuccessful. Whatever the reasons. And after I was born, I was in an incubator for about 12 weeks. And she gets me out of the hospital and takes me home. And decides that she just can't deal with me, can't keep me, can't do it. Goes to the people who were going to adopt me, that she canceled the adoption. They were having a yard sale, selling off all of the stuff that they had bought from my nursery, and basically said like, hey, can you babysit him for a day? I have to go party. Like, I need to get out of this for a little bit. 2-3 days go by. Finally get a phone call from her saying, hey, like, if you want to keep him, you can. Like, that was how the adoption went down.
Whoa.
Right.
And the family they felt kind of at that point like it's either us or this baby doesn't have a chance kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so gracious enough, thankful for them, like, thank God for them. They were, they weren't in a position to adopt a baby and they did anyway. And so they,
did you stay with that family for a while? Is that how you were raised with that family?
That's how I was raised. That's how I grew up.
I just want to give them a cheers, man. Let's give them, they saved a life and look, you're what, 32 years old and healthy and doing fantastic in business today because of that opportunity they gave you from literally day one.
Literally, man.
Yeah.
Literally from day one.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, man. It's incredible. It's really sad, but it's also like, thankfully has the good, it's not the end of the story, but it's the next chapters looked good. So, tell me about how that from an early age, did that inspire you? Like when you knew, obviously you didn't know when you were really little because you just figured what you were going through is what kind of every kid goes through until you realize maybe when you get a little older. So walk us through that once you got a little bit older, hanging out with your friends and you realize that you actually didn't, have a connection to your birth parents.
Yeah.
To anyone who may be going through that or has kids that maybe they're either adopting or maybe they're in a blended family or some situation, how were you able to still keep a level head? And was that something that you had to do a lot of work on over time?
It was definitely something I had to do a lot of work on. Candidly, that section of my life, like I didn't really do a lot of work on until I was probably 23, 24, mainly because I was in survival mode in other areas. Like I grew up in the ghetto. The house we lived in, I had brothers that were into drugs and in and out of prison, and a sister, same thing. And so most of my young adult life, like I was in survival mode, even from a young age, like having to not fight kids at school. And like, it was just a not a healthy, conducive environment. And so by the time I found out I was adopted, I think the one thing that it did was it kind of created a level of resentment towards my birth mom. And as I got older, it turned into a level of empathy. Like I can't imagine what she was going through at that time to like that's got to be terrible
to make those
painful
decisions,
for her to go through that. Yeah. And to be in a position to have to, like, that's a decision that's on the table. Like there's got to be some rough stuff going on in her life at the time too. And so,
that's incredible. I don't want to look past that, man. The fact that you were able to have that kind of 180 view on it and going through something and know that you were put in such I mean, what, 2-3 times she was trying to go through an abortion and
three times
was not successful, and you were able to be born, and then this other family, man, what a blessing, but it sounds like that wasn't necessarily like you were in this silver spoon, I think is the term for it, right? So there were still some situations where your brothers now and your siblings of this other family that you're adopted into were having problems. So didn't sound like you were getting everything you can, but at least now you're like, okay, I'm alive. All right, now there's this new survival. And it sounds like there was different steps of life that you had to continue to go through. It's really amazing. The word miracle I don't use often, but I feel like in your case, it's the only word I can use that you're here today at 32 with such a level head and like such a great story, because it's so many people and it's easy to be put in a situation and we end up being collective to our environment. And then you end up doing, the wrong things, but it's all it's what you grew up into.
Right.
So how did you eventually start to separate yourself from some of those things you didn't want to get involved in?
So yeah, man, early on for me, I was probably 13, 14 years old. And, I had a rough environment around me. I had to fight to survive. There were, gang issues in the place I grew up in. There were all these problems. And for me, there was actually a church camp that I wanted to go to one summer, and my parents couldn't afford it. And it was like $1,000 or something. I don't really remember, but like they couldn't afford it. And they told me, they said, hey, if you want to go, you're going to have to come up with your own money to go. And so my dad had, one of our neighbors was like, I'll let you mow my lawn for $5, front lawn for $5, back lawn for $5. I was like, great. And so mowed their lawn and then went and knocked on their neighbor's door, mowed their lawn, and just started kind of going around and knocking on neighbors' doors and saying, hey, can I mow your lawn? And it's like, hey, can I wash your car? And I started doing that little entrepreneurial gig early on. Went to church camp, came back, and I was like, I'm just going to keep doing this. This is great. And I remember there was one weekend particularly where I'm going to school, and after school, I'd come home, I'd knock doors, and I would mow all the lawns and wash the cars Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I remember being in my bed one day, or my room one day, counting my money from the weekend. And my mom walks in and she sits down next to me on the bed and she goes, oh, are you counting all the money you've been saving? I'm like, no, this is what I made this weekend. And her mouth kind of falls open on the floor. She was like, you made more money than Dad did this weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like this is wild. And so I kind of knew from that point that there were two different paths. My dad works 100 hours a week, drives 2 hours back and forth to work every day. And here I am at 14 years old making more money than he is. But I kind of became a victim of my environment. I started getting into more fights and gang problems, and just ran into all these issues and problems in life that were kind of holding me back. 16, 17 years old, I got expelled from school for fighting. I was probably 15, 16, got expelled from high school for fighting. I was just a troublemaker, dude. Mm-hmm. And I realized, like, okay, I have these two paths. I see my brothers, they're in and out of prison. I see my sister, she's in and out of prison. They're doing drugs. We're having problems at the house. Cops are showing up. It's a nightmare. And I realized I have two paths, and I can either go the path that makes me money, or I can go the path that gets me in prison. Those are the only two paths that I see at the time. Mm-hmm. So the path that I chose was to go make money, and started working 2 jobs in high school, started doing my own thing, detailing cars on the side. I remember being in math class, having guys detailing cars for me, counting how much money I'm making in math class. And they're trying to get me to do the Pythagorean theorem. I'm like, dude, I don't even care about this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing it. And so I was probably 16, 17 when I just kind of decided, like, I have two paths. And if I don't choose one now, it's going to be chosen for me. And I had gotten into some self-development at the time. A friend's dad of mine recommended How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that kind of led me down that path of self-development and learning. And then as I turned 18, the big trigger for me was my goal was 10K a month. Like, if I could just get to 10K a month, man, I want to be rich. Like, I can have whatever I want. Obviously, that's kind of a lie, but like, that's what I believed. And so I'm driving down the freeway and there's a billboard and it says, if you didn't make 10K last month, call me.
Come on. Like,
yeah.
literally
so
your exact
literally
amount. Yeah.
So I called him.
Yeah.
3 days later goes by. I kind of forgot I made the phone call. I was driving home from work in my busted pickup truck, get a call from a guy at Randall Badnagas, still good friends to this day with him. And he was promoting a real estate investment education, network marketing kind of thing. And that's what opened my world to that. I remember going to my first meeting, seeing guys up at the front of the room doing 50, 60, 80, 100K a month. And my whole world shifted at that point. I'm like, this is what's possible. Like, I learned wrong. Got to do something different. So that
if
was
they
like
can do it, why not me was your question, right? Why not me?
Exactly. Why not me?
Man, that's incredible because, you know, like I said, man, it's such a trap when you're like put into such a horrible situation, like the fights and stuff. Really, if somebody got down to into the nitty gritty of your story, they'd understand where all this angst is coming from, and it'd be understandable. And like, you know, yeah, if somebody fights, the school really has no option but to break this fight up and then discipline each student. So it's not like you can really blame them for that. But I'm glad to see that you were able to say, there's a different way for myself. You saw a way out, and this way it was kind of that entrepreneurial push. You probably didn't think of it that way at 16 years old. You didn't have podcasts to listen to back then, or probably didn't even grab a book. I don't want to speak for you, but you're in go. It sounds like you're in action mode. Just take action, figure it out, right?
My whole life was just running away from being poor up to that point.
Okay.
So everything was just go.
So
Don't
was that
be poor,
simple?
don't be poor.
Yeah, it was that simple.
That was it.
Now, did you also, in addition to that being the fire ignited under your rear end, like, was there someone, a person, maybe it was a book or something that you were influenced by? Like you said, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. But was there like a figure that maybe you looked up to at that point?
I would say the standard Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, like those were like my anchors to give me the motivation. But I think that in reality, I was trying to prove everybody wrong. Mm-hmm. And so the thing I looked up to was like, I remember I wrestled in high school I had an ultimatum that they said, you can come back and do extracurricular activity or stay expelled, you pick. And I came back and I remember my dad telling me, like, don't be surprised if you don't make varsity your first year. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm making freaking varsity, dude. Like, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And so I always kind of had that chip on my shoulder of like, I just want to prove you guys wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of my thing I looked up to, oddly enough, of like, if I don't prove you wrong, I'm a failure. Mm-hmm. Right. I gave in to what you believed in me, but then I used the classics, the Jim Rohns, the Zig Ziglars, the Tony Robbins to give me the motivation to actually do it.
The Mount Rushmore of motivators right there. Yeah, those are some. I love Les Brown, especially from the list there, but so good, man. You know, it's interesting. Like, you know, this is a topic I've covered a couple times on the show, but not often, where someone's backstory obviously is what can really ignite them. But we don't talk about like when someone has it almost too good to start. Like, they can definitely have more opportunities. Their parents can pay for them for coaches. Like, if they're interested in sports, they can get their personal coach and have a tennis court in their backyard from, you know, they're 3 years old hitting tennis balls. Of course, by the time they're 20, they're going to be like a world-class athlete, right? But there's something that also they don't have, which is being scared for your life and having it literally be like, you go to school, you don't know if you're going to come home, if you're safe. You come home and you're less safe than you were at school, and you're always in survival mode. And then 14 years old, you're making more loot than your dad in that weekend selling, you know, car washes and shoveling snow. But I don't think, did you say shoveling snow? Did I make that up?
Mowing lawns. No, there's no snow in California.
Yeah, I'm in Buffalo. So I was picturing the Buffalo version of the story. We could barely, it's the opposite. We got like snow 10 months out of the year and sunshine and grass too. But so you were hustling. And you learn
Yep.
that, like, the other kid's not going to be able to learn those emotions and feelings that
No.
self-motivated you over time.
It gave me thick skin, Mike. Like, it gave me the ability to handle the bullshit more than anyone else in this world that I know can. And my best friend Anthony and I talk about this all the time. He's like, dude, the amount of pressure, and he's an entrepreneur too. He's like, the amount of pressure, and he grew up in the same environment I did. And he's from Russia. Like, he's more savage than I am. But he always goes like, the amount of pressure that we handle on a daily basis to do what we do would crush the average human.
Yeah,
Would crush
agreed.
them.
And speaking of pressure, that's how you make diamonds, man. Right? The pressure is what makes the diamonds. Yeah. And I see it in your story. I didn't know all of that. I've watched a couple other interviews that you happen to be in. So I knew a little bit of the story about, like, how the first couple of years of your life were really scary, but I didn't know about the rest. So I'm glad we kind of covered that. I don't know if you shared that often, but maybe your audience is coming back because they see your name attached to this podcast and like, oh, I'm more Kyle. That maybe they heard some of this for the first time. We're going to actually take a quick 2-minute timeout. We're going to dive right back in where we left off. We'll be right back in 2 minutes with Kyle Livingston. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you. And that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight. And Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business. All right, we're back in action with Kyle Livingston, and remember, you can connect with him on social media. I have his website and social clickable in the show notes. And what I'd like to do is we're hearing your story, man, and how obviously you started from a place of survival. You've gone through it in your formative years into your teens. And by the time you were 20, you already knew how to have a great hustle. You're doing the MLM stuff. Talk about how you transitioned from that level of understanding maybe sales and personal skills to present a product, a service, into actually running multiple businesses, because that's a big transition. When did that all happen, and how did you unpack all that?
So it was interesting because I had grown up kind of in a construction environment, very blue collar. My dad was blue collar. My older brother, who's 26 years my senior, 25 years my senior, he owned a construction company that I worked for when I was a kid, just helping him out here and there. So I kind of grew up in a construction world. And when I turned 18, I got into, I was an adrenaline junkie, and I got into climbing and building cell phone towers. And so I'm climbing and building cell phone towers. I'm driving a jalopy of a pickup truck. And I was actually doing roofing when I saw that billboard, went from roofing to doing tower work. And so I'm doing construction with blue collar workers and trying to create a dream at the same time. And I'll never forget, I had a copy of a Success magazine with me that I would read on my way into work in the morning while, the project manager or foreman or who's ever driving the truck. And I would get laughed at. And they would mock me for looking at this stuff and all these things. And I just knew, like, if I just kept going, like, this is no different than childhood. It's just, they're just older and bigger. If I just keep doing what I'm doing, like, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I actually had an opportunity to move up very quickly. So from the time I was 19 to 21, I had gone from being a standard technician in the tower business, climbing towers, to being a senior technician, to being a project manager in 2 short years.
Wow.
And I had my own office that I was running at 21 years old. I had about between 60 and 70 employees that reported directly to me. And we were crushing, we were cranking. I had the hustle culture, so I was pushing. And we were doing better than every other office. The company had, I think, 28 or 32 offices, somewhere around there across the US and Canada. And we had the number 1 performing office in the entire business.
Yeah.
And so I kept asking for a raise, asking for a raise, asking for a raise, asking for a raise. And my boss loved me. His boss hated me because how young I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally get in front of this guy. His name was Matt. He looked like Dr. Eggman from the Sonic game, if you've ever played it.
Oh,
like
God.
Literally twins. Literal twins, dude.
Dr. Robotnik?
Robotic with a mustache and everything, dude. Like, he was the guy. And so, like, so to give you guys a little picture. So I'm sitting at this desk across from him. And I said, hey, man, listen, I just want to make what the other project managers are making. And at the time, it was $140K a year.
Yeah.
And he literally looks at me and he goes, you're too young to make that kind of money.
Right.
So I quit. I literally on the spot walked out. I gave my truck keys, my credit card, my laptop, everything. And I left. And I remember sitting on the curb outside, waiting to be picked up going, shit, what did I just do? I just gave away a 6-figure job at 21 years old. Like, what am I doing? This is stupid. And I remember sitting on the curb going like, okay, well, let me see what else I could drum up with, right? I'm the sales guy. Like, I'll go sell stuff. So I start calling people on my phone and I land a like $6,000 or $7,000 job before I get picked up. I was like, this is awesome. This is great. Let's go do this. I go out to do the job. It took me maybe 4 hours. And I realized between the drive, the setup, everything, I was in at 10 hours. I made $7,000. Whoa. Like, this is the real game.
Yeah.
Let's start doing this. And
that was just for one gig. Like, you made that in
one gig.
Yeah.
1 gig, 4 hours. I was on site for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Guy paid me $7,000. You know, and I had to drive about an hour there, hour back, had to do some prep. All in all, I was in it for 7 hours.
Yeah.
And I remember going like, wow, like this, if I could do $1,000 an hour, this is great. And but like, I also had to pay bills and stuff. And so I called my credit union, who I had at the time, and I had decent credit. And they gave me a $20,000 credit card. And that's what I used to start my first company. And so I went out to...
this is not that long ago. You're 32 years old, right? So this is within the last 10 years, all of this really formed into what we see today. I mean, this is incredible. I want to say, before you continue on in the story, how important it is when you were in that truck, you're looking at Success Magazine, and these guys were laughing at you. It's because, as you know, when they see a young, not only just because you were young, you could have been 35 years old and they would have probably still been laughing at you, because most people that are in a particular place in life, that buddy system, if it's at work or in sports, and their best friend is going to now a prestigious college, but all of them are at the local college, they're going to have this issue when they're hanging out. And he's separating himself, so we're going to kind of mock it and make it like we're cool. This guy's weird. And they were doing that because those guys weren't going to figure out a way to bust through. They were just like, we're happy. We got our lunch pails. We're going to work hard. And I'm not even talking down on the work they were doing, but their mindset was garbage.
It was all mindset. Mindset's trash.
And so you knew that from a young age. You've seen it from the family dynamic, the school dynamic, now in the workforce dynamic. And amazingly, all three of those big developers in somebody's personality and well-being, you just blew it all off over time. And then eventually you still were going, and then you did this $7,000 4-hour job. And it sounds like you kind of never looked back.
I didn't, man. I didn't. And there were challenges, right? Like, I started there, started cranking, started going. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, can I get bigger gigs? Can I do something that's not this? Can I start playing in the big boys? You know, and I have this $20,000 credit card, and I'm like, dude, to me at that time, that was all the money in the world. Mm-hmm. Like, there's more than 20 grand available to me in the world. Like, there's no way, right? That's kind of my mindset around money. And one thing that I've never really shared, that I was actually talking to a buddy the other day about this, one thing that I didn't do ever was play small. And so even when I went to do tower work, and construction, the way that construction work is set up is you have like the big dogs like AT&T and all these companies, but they never give you directly the work. they give their work to someone else, and then that person, as like the big vendor, gives work to other big vendors, and those vendors then give it down to the smaller vendors. And I'm like, that's way too far away. If I can't work for AT&T, I want to work for the next vendor down, and that's it, because I don't want 7 people taking their hands out of my money. And so I always, at a young age, played bigger than I actually was, and I think that led a lot to my success, because I was able to get the bigger jobs. I was able to show up in the bigger rooms and do the bigger things, even though I didn't feel worthy of that. I had to play bigger because that's where the money was at.
Yeah, you didn't want to wait for the trickle down. Like if a job made $100,000, you didn't want your 7% of it as the last drip. You were like, I want to be somewhere at that 100,000 and figure out how we could divvy it up if there's a team involved or expenses. But I want to be the one who's collecting the original pay and figure out where it goes from there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was always trying to play a big ball game.
Right.
And first company we built, very successful, ended up selling it to one of the big vendors I was telling you about. Second company was a partnership. I'd sold my company and had separated. I was like, I'm going to go travel and enjoy my life for a little bit. I was going through a divorce at the time, and I'm like, I just want to go and enjoy my life. I get a call from a guy who had a company that was failing. He's like, look, man, my company's been in the red for the last 90 days. I'm losing about $100,000 a month. I heard you're really good at this. Can you come help me? I'm like, dude, I'm traveling the world. He's like, just let me take you to dinner. I was like, okay, fine. So we go sit down at dinner. I'm 22 at this point. God. He's like, look, man, here's the situation. I want you to come in and help me. And in my mind, I was like, dude, I'll entertain it. I'll get free dinner and I'll make you an offer that's so crazy you're never going to say yes.
Exactly.
I made him the offer and he didn't flinch and said yes. And I was like, oh, we're here again. Great. And so I now have equity in this new company. I have a 6-figure salary, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
We turn that company around, turn it wildly profitable, sell it to another big dog in the space. And now I'm 2 businesses out, hadn't failed yet. I think I am King Tut, dude. And so we start a third company, and I get a big investor to come in, put in millions of dollars to get going. And we don't see eye to eye on some stuff. We get into an argument. Over that argument, I tell him to write me a check. I'm out. He writes me a check and I leave.
Wow.
And so I'm now 3 companies in.
Yeah.
Exited all of them. Dude, I thought I was like God. I'm Bill Gates. You can't talk to me. You can't touch me.
Scary place to be, though. I mean, like, again, you know, at early 20s, it's fine. Like, you can have that level of success. There's nobody can say you can't or you shouldn't. Like that guy who said that's too much money for you to have at that age is a terrible mindset for him to say that. What he could have been is a great mentor to you and had a phenomenal person for the next 30 years or until he retired, if he wanted to, if he would have been a better coach. But the thing that does, you see it happen a lot with athletes is, you know, especially like in the NFL, I know they go from kind of rough upbringings to making tens of millions of dollars in their first 2-3 years. Well, they have the rookie deal. Once they get paid in their second contract kind of thing, guys get kind of stupid with it because they don't know what to do. They've never had that amount of money. So as far as retaining it or doing the right stuff with it is tough because you're literally telling someone to do something they've never done with little to no education. So is that kind of what you were experiencing as you were going a little bit out of spin and out of control with it?
To some degree, there were definitely areas in my life. I mean, one thing that I don't highlight enough is even though I was having success in this area of my life, I had cannibalized my marriage to do it.
Okay.
And so we had gone through divorce.
When did you get married though? What stage were you at when you guys fell in love and got married? Because I think it's important to know in the story.
High school sweethearts.
Wow.
Got married at 20. Got married at 20, divorced at 23.
Oh,
finalized, everything was done. You had to have a waiting period. We were divorced at 23.
But she saw you from basically go from, I'm going to use a term that I've heard before, and not to say that you were this, but like 0 to hero kind of. She saw that transition.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
she was
she's
definitely
like,
there for it.
But she's waiting for like the hero in the marriage now.
Yeah. Not only that, we were both young and dumb. I don't think either of us really knew how to navigate the circumstances we were in. She wanted a more safe, secure, white picket fence, 2.5 kids life. I wanted the entrepreneur, go all out. And so we were kind of going 2 different avenues anyway. We sat down, had a mutual discussion of like, hey, listen, what you want and what I want are not the same things. Let's do this now so it doesn't become a tumultuous like issue later.
Yeah.
Let's do this now.
Do it the right way, man. I did the same thing when I was 31. So I know.
Nice, man.
Been there.
Nothing
You
wrong with
got
having a
an
practice
earlier
marriage.
start. You got an earlier start. Yeah. No, I'm not against marriage all the time. I'm happy when I see my friends like happily married. They're having their second and third kid. I'm like, I celebrate that so much. But yeah, it's good that you had the clarity of knowing what you wanted. Too many people get kind of trapped into like, oh, now I have to be this other person because this is what I sign up for and I got to hold up my end of it. And I can respect that to a certain degree. But if it's taking away your personality and your passion and your character, you're just not going to be good in that role anyway. You're going to be kind of miserable after a few years of it. Talk about 20 years later and people have their midlife crisis. So that's good that you had clarity and you were willing to do whatever you needed to do to keep going in the direction you wanted to. So where did you go from that stage then?
So from that point, I had vouched to never, ever, ever get back into construction again. Out of it, I don't want to do it. I'm out. And I had always done real estate investing, right, from that billboard throughout this entire season in time. And I'd still been really connected, get plugged back into a real estate investment club out in Riverside. Like they were my mentors. Like I considered them like mother and father figures to me. Mm-hmm. And that's actually where I met my wife now. And I was on stage teaching about creative acquisition. She was in the audience. It was super cool. Like, love it. Super cool story.
Dude, that's awesome.
From there, I get a call from a guy. He goes, hey, man, his name was Clay. And he goes, hey, man, I have about $4 million worth of work in the tower business, right? We were good friends. He's like, the business that you just sold last year just went under. So the NDA that you had with them is now null and void. And I want to give all the work to you instead.
Boom.
Oh,
light bulb, like, okay. Kick the door in. Yeah.
It was $3 million work. It was $3 million in work, not $4. I'm sorry. It's $3 million in work. And I was like, great, let's do it. Let's roll. And so I ended up buying back everything that I had sold in my old company, all the tools and trailers and trucks and everything for literally 10 cents on the dollar. Got everything back for like $7,000, including trucks and trailers and tools. It was crazy.
Holy crap.
And it was wild, dude. Wild.
Yeah.
And so I go and we start this next project. And from day one, it was a nightmare, man. Like, I could go into the horror stories we had. Like I had a project manager that I'd recruited, had spent a ton of time bringing on, training, all this stuff. We get everything ready. We go launch. And about a week in, this dude just disappears. We're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He just disappears. I'm like, where'd this guy go? Like, what happened? 3 days later, I thought the dude drove home. I thought I have no idea what happened, right? Can't get a hold of him, nothing. About 3 days later, it's about 11, 12 o'clock at night. I'm upstairs. The way that I did this is I had a housing where I would have like myself a room, and then we have our employees that would stay with us. And so there's
cool.
employees.
I know another guy who does that. The whole team is basically in one big house.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So we just rent a mansion because it was cheaper than renting 7 or 8 Motel 6 rooms. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we just rent a big giant mansion. And so it's about 11, 12, maybe 1 in the morning, somewhere late at night. And I'm sleeping and I hear all hell break loose downstairs. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like, what is going on? And so I run downstairs. I'm probably in my underwear or something. I run downstairs and the guy, the project manager that left 3 days ago, is crawling in a window, of the house on crawling over another employee, tearing apart his phone on a meth bender.
Oof.
Completely strung out of his mind.
Yeah.
And the one dude that I kind of anchored my business on to help me out is strung out on meth, and I now have to fire.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say something happened where like he got killed or something, just caught up in the middle
he's just high as a kite.
Bad situation, but he was self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted. Yeah. Wow. Self-inflicted. And so that was the start of the business, and everything over the next 9 months kind of went in a very similar fashion. I had a big contractor that we were doing work with go bankrupt. That was tons of money we lost. I was a terrible leader. I thought I was King Tut. I thought I was like, my ego was the size of this room that I'm in. I wasn't a good leader. We had hired and fired 60 people out of a team of 30, like just the course of 9 months. And so we were just churning through bodies. And I just hated what I was doing. And I was flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't know how to troubleshoot my business. I knew hustle, but I didn't understand business.
Right.
And it was a
really good reflection though.
All the way to the point to where I was pushing and going and doing everything so hard. I ended up walking into the house one day and I collapsed. And I remember I thought I was having a heart attack. I'm 25 years old. I'm thinking I'm having a freaking heart attack, dude. I'm like, I can't feel my arms. I feel like you're sitting on my chest. And I black out. And the next thing I know is I wake up, I'm being rushed into an ambulance. and I black out again. I wake up like 18 hours later and I have all these wires on my chest and I black out again. And like this went over the course of 24 hours. I remember those 3 moments, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And that for the first time in my life, I had felt anxiety or panic. And it had completely shut down my central nervous system.
Because things were out of your control at that point. Everything else you were able to control and make a decision. But in that moment, you weren't able to do that. And that's a scary place to be.
We were out of money. We were out of time. I had employees that were relying on me. Like I had to make payroll the next day. Like it was a nightmare for me. And I had no like high level optics of my business. And so even though we were in a pickle, I had no idea how to get out of it. No idea how to get out of it. And so body shut down, came back, kept pushing for another 4 or 5 months, came to the place where it's like, dude, I can't do this anymore. And we shut it down. And in that season, we did about $3 million in revenue, and I lost about $160,000 on it. So we were negative cash flow, 160 grand. And so 3 million in revenue on a run rate and lost 160 grand. And I'm now sitting here going, maybe I'm not so good. Right now I'm questioning identity. Now I'm questioning a lot of things in my life that I never had to question before.
Do you think that humbling experience helped you though? Yeah.
It was the best thing that's ever happened to me as an adult. Like leaps and bounds, the most powerful thing that's ever happened to me, because what I realized is that the hustle, the grind, the running from being poor was what got me here. And it will not be the thing that gets me where I want to go. I have to find a different reason, because I was no longer poor. So I had nothing to run from. I was running from a figment of my imagination that was old, 5, 6, 7 years old at this point.
So now you kind of got back to a place that you've felt before, and that allowed you to start from square one again, which you've done that 3, 4, 5 times, if not more, when you're talking about childhood. So I know you got to run in a couple minutes here. So share some of the success that came from this once you realized, and you had to kind of get real with yourself, and in that moment reflect on it, and then you took the next step forward. Where does that put you? Yeah.
So I needed some time to just decompress and reset. I knew I wanted to get into the online world. I'd been kind of playing with like drop shipping and like stuff, in the background. And I was like, I knew I wanted to get in the online world. This was 2016, 17, somewhere around there. And I had a buddy that was doing drop shipping and Facebook ads. So I kind of get into that, but like I didn't know enough about the world on online. So I went, bought a 36-foot RV with my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, remodeled it, went and traveled the world or the country, learning digital marketing, learning sales, learning the game of online business, and started a marketing agency with a partner. And we started doing really well. We got to like 10K a month, 15K a month, 20K a month, signed a big contract with a franchise, got to 60K a month. Woke up the next day, business was gone. Business partner went, cleaned out our bank accounts, re-signed all the contracts to his old business name.
Holy shit.
And now here I am.
It's not the first time I've heard that,
after losing
man.
my business.
Not the first time I heard that stuff. Yeah, that's
happens.
Sick.
And so here I am again, starting over again.
Wow.
I'm like, dang it, dude, what's going to happen? And I'll never forget this, dude. We could no longer live at the house we were living in. Couldn't afford the rent. So we moved into an Airbnb that this lady graciously let us move into without a deposit, without running our credit. Like it was wild. And we were so broke. I remember moving into the Airbnb and we needed dinner. And like, I'm going through the couch cushions to like find enough change to go get Taco Bell. Like that's the position we were in 2017. And so I was like, all right, dude, something's got to change. Something's got to be different. And I began working in the online space a lot more. I began doing marketing for people, and we were really successful. And I remember getting a call from one of my biggest clients at the time. He was on a retainer for like 5 or 6K a month. And he goes, hey man, I got to shut down ads. I'm like, Mike, why? Like what's going on, dude? He's like, I just can't take on any more work. And I'm like, that's a problem I can solve. Yeah. Because my entire business in telecom was how do I make a bigger shovel, not how do I find more gold? Like I never had to sell, I just had to do. And so I told him, I was like, you're not going to stop paying me. I'm going to fly up to New York. We're going to fix your business and we're going to continue running ads. Yeah. So I flew up to New York. We fixed his operations. We doubled his business in a year.
Here you go again.
Wow, this works. And so started working with people in that space, started working in the operations space and realizing that people were really good at what they do. Right? They're really good at the technical work of what they do. They're really good at being a coach or a consultant or a brick and mortar business owner or like a tower climber, whatever. but they were terrible at actually running a business.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of sparked my passion of like, man, if you can figure out how to get to a business to 100K a month, I'll show you how to get it to $1 million a month. If you can figure out the basics, I'll show you the business. And that was kind of the thing that we did back and forth for the last 3 years. And it's like, dude, we've worked with a lot of companies and a lot of clients that have just been wildly successful because we got the business owner to be a business owner and get out of the technician role.
Mm-hmm. That's so good, man. I got a couple more for you. Got a couple more minutes here where we could slam dunk this thing. I normally say that, when someone drops like a great piece of information, some gold on the show, it's a mic drop moment. I'm not blowing smoke, man. This whole interview has been a mic drop moment. Like our promos for this thing is going to be 45 minutes long. You know what I'm saying? So, and I also want to say, whenever I talk to a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, and I produce podcasts. A lot of people have that entrepreneurial story that are launching their show. And, I talk to a lot of people who are kind of like, get in these modes where it's like, the roller coaster's on the way down. And I think this is a great episode that I'm going to continue to share with friends, family, my network, and probably pull a lot of social clips throughout the year because, man, I've had so many people on that have a resilient story, but this isn't comeback story. This is comeback story after comeback story after comeback story. I mean, I think we hit on like 7 or 8 of them, and we're just talking for 45 minutes. So I know that there's so much more we could have got into today. So the person who's listening right now, and they're in that mode, they've done it. They're great at what they do, like you just said. I know so many people, myself included, that are great at what we do. But sometimes, like the business side of it might get in the way or whatever, and we find ourselves kind of trying to build it back up. What are 2-3 things you'd say, do these things right away before you worry about some of the other stuff? What are like the non-negotiables to get going again?
If you're starting back at 0, right, non-negotiables are get really freaking good at sales.
Okay.
Like, go learn sales. Because if you can't sell, that's like the beginning of everything. Like, because people think it's marketing. It's like, dude, I could literally go to the grocery store and sell something. Like, I go to the grocery store, as they're walking out, I could sell them something if I was desperate enough, right? And so if you can get really good at sales, that's going to be the biggest thing. Because to me, that's the fundamental for business success, is knowing and understanding how to sell. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to be ethical. I'm going to put a caveat on this. Don't be a slime ball because you're in a desperate situation, right? You have to actually be able to deliver on whatever it is you sell. But I think the biggest thing is, as you get moving and as you get a little bit of momentum, what I've seen to be the cause for me of the ups and the downs and the feasts and the famines and all these things is I'm not building a system or process around what it is that I'm doing as the technician. And so when I stop doing the things that I'm doing as a technician, everything stops because I've stopped. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people out there think they have a business when in reality, they just have a really cool job that they are tied to, that they can't fire themselves from. And I think the biggest thing is like, I'll give you some super practical stuff that I teach our clients. Mm-hmm. If you are in the technician phase, you can sell, you can get a little bit of momentum. To stay in momentum, right? Because like, to get momentum, it's really hard to teach. It's kind of a skill set. You have to create, right? And so once you get a little bit of momentum, the best way that I've found to do it is like, find the biggest things that you can do in your business and find a way to only do those things. Because if you can do the top 3 or 5 things in your business that got you to get some momentum, and don't worry about the admin work, don't worry about the silly stuff that you feel like you have to do. Like, find somebody in the Philippines, find somebody in Mexico, find somebody in another country, offload that stuff to them for hardly any money at all compared to the States. Sure. And like, get your time back so you can actually focus on the things that move the needle in the business and continue to create that momentum. Mm-hmm. Because for me, it was, I would get into doing the things, I would get into like to fulfillment or the admin or whatever. And then the things that got me to get momentum were no longer there. And now I'm in that famine space again. And now I got to scramble and make a feast. And while I'm feasting, I stop worrying about
you're in the wrong role
incoming products of money.
You find yourself doing the other stuff that isn't really your superpower. That is fantastic advice, guys. Go back and listen to that one more time and dive into this interview, because Kyle, man, I appreciate you being real. You're about to finish up that thought.
I was saying, I think the biggest piece of creating consistency is creating leverage. And the best way to get leverage in a business is not doing the things that you shouldn't or don't like to do.
Yeah. Mic drop moment right there, dude. I appreciate that. That is so true. I find myself sometimes catching myself still doing that. Like, oh, what am I doing? Okay, I can get somebody to do this or bring someone
Same.
on where this is what they're great at, opposed to me trying to get in there. And usually we end up screwing it up, and then we got to fix it when we should have just not been in there in the first place. Last thing I'm gonna throw at you, and this isn't a curveball. It's really to kind of put a bow on this whole conversation. And we talked about your past, we talked about the current, and I want to talk about the future here. So think of it this way. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story, and you get to write the ending. And God willing, you continue to live a long and prosperous life. You're looking back, you're reflecting on it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
Man, that's a really easy one for me to answer because I look at this every single morning. For me, my goal, I have a really big heart for rescuing women and children from sex trafficking. And so for me, if I can look back on my life in that end chapter, and there's a total of the amount of women and children that I've been able to fund the rescue and get out of sex slavery and fund the rehabilitation of them to become a normal, societal, living, like good human that can live a healthy, happy life. Like my number is 360 people. Like if I can get 360 women and children out of cages, prevent them from being sold to the highest bidding pig in the room, like that's how I'm going to leave my legacy, man. And that, to me, there's a ripple effect that comes with that. From like not only them, but like their family, their legacy, their people. And then the clients we work directly with, a big thing for me there is like their children will never have to worry about their parents working 100 hours a week and not having money to pay the bills. They're never going to have to worry about their mom or dad missing their dance recitals every Wednesday because they have to work.
Wow,
and so they're going to grow up
man.
A whole generation of kids with less trauma than I grew up with. And that's important.
Man, I got chills just hearing you say that because I was just thinking of that little kid that's growing up in this crazy scenario, and here you are turning around and when you wake up, the thing that's driving you and getting you on purpose is thinking about people who are paying and hiring you and your company to help them out, and the reason you're helping them is so they can have a better lifestyle, better time with their family, work less hours, be more productive, make more money, all the things that you want to help people do, but it gets back to the roots of what's really important, which is that healthy, happy lifestyle with their family. I have a lot of respect for you. And the other thing is I have a big passion for helping out in the whole thing, sex slavery. You see it, sex trafficking. It's the number one crime in America, or maybe number two to gun violence, I think, or whatever. Or no, drugs. Drugs is one. I think sex trafficking is two. But we don't even know the numbers because it's all hidden and nobody knows this stuff is going on until we find out months and months later. So the numbers are always way behind. I actually created merchandise for the show. Be Great, Be Grateful is what the BGBG is. I have hats, T-shirts, the whole thing. 100% of it goes to different organizations, and I have selected a few that are anti-sex slavery and trafficking, and also like anti the porn industry because I know some of that leads into it and bleeds into it. So I'm trying to do my best there. Every time I get like $50 in sales and not sales but profit, I do like little deposits to different ones. Every $50 goes to somewhere different.
I love that.
But that's tiny. What I'd love to do is stay in connection with you. I feel like we can be great friends and continue to work together. And if you ever have a project or something that's you want more eyeballs on, please connect with me, and I'd love to help you with that. We have very similar missions. You over-delivered today for the mic'd up audience. Last thing I'm going to tell you guys, thank you for being with us today. Be great and be grateful. Thanks, Kyle.
See ya.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mikedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mikedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MikeDiCioccio. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.